Today we'll discuss a little bit about the Sheva Mitzvos b'nei Noach, the 7 commandments for the children of Noach, and then specifically we'll get into, are there any other commandments besides the 7 that a Gentile is obligated in? For instance, is a Gentile obligated, again from a Jewish point of view, not from their own point of view, they may or may not be, but from Judaism's point of view, are they obligated, let's say, in the midst of tzedakah, in the midst of giving charity? Are they obligated in kibbud av v'aim, in honoring their parents, etc.? So first, let's go back. We'll discuss the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and we'll take it from there. I'll read from a Rambam in Hilchos Melachim, Perek Tes, Halacha Aleph, Chapter 9, Halacha Aleph. The Rambam goes through the history behind the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and then some. So he writes, Al Shisha Dvarim Nitztava Adam Harishon. On 6 things, Adam Harishon. First, there are only 6 mitzvahs b'nei Adam. Adam was only commanded in 6 commandments. Al Avodah Zarah, the prohibition of idol worship. Val Birkas Hashem, a euphemism. It literally means blessing God, but it means cursing God. Val Shvichas Damim, on murder, spilling of blood. Val Gila Arayas, illicit relations. Val Hagezel, robbery. Val Hadinim, on setting up a court system. Those are the 6 mitzvahs given to Adam Harishon. Afal Pi Shakuan Hein Kabbalah V'Yadinu Mimoshe Rabbeinu. Even though all of them, we know, we also, as we'll see, we have a Kabbalah from Moshe Rabbeinu on these things. Vadas Notelahen Mechlal Divrei Torah Sha'al Elu Nitzava. So basically, the 6 mitzvahs given to Adam, and then the Rambam writes, Hosif L'Noach Ever Menachai. The 7th one was added to Noach because Adam wasn't permitted in meat, so there wasn't an Ever Menachai. That's why it's called the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, not the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Adam, because Adam only had 6. And the way I always remember them is I remember the big 3, the 3 things a Jew has to give up his life for: idol worship, murder, and illicit relations. And then Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled. Aleph is Eber Menachai. Beis is Birkas Hashem, you from cursing God. Gimel, Gezel, and Dinim is setting up a court system. For a later discussion, that is, how broad is Dinim? That is a major dispute between the Rambam and the Ramban on how comprehensive that is, and it has to do with the whole story we'll read about with Shem in Parshas Vayishlach, that we know Bnei Yaakov killed out the city of Shem, and Yaakov seemed to be upset about it. Exactly why was Yaakov upset? Why were they in violation of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach? That's a separate class, but that revolves around this issue. So that's what it says. We have 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. We had 7 mitzvahs until Abraham came along. But Abraham and Istava Yesar al Elu b'Mila. Abraham came along and added another mitzvah called Mila. And also, who is Palo Shacharis? He also added Shacharis. The Yitzchak Hifrish Meiser. Yitzchak gave us the mitzvah Meiser, even though we have Yaakov Asher Asrenu. V'Hosif Tfilah Charis Lifnos Yom. He also added Mincha. The Yaakov, Hosef, we'll read about it also this week, Gid HaNasheh, and Yaakov added another mitzvah, Gid HaNasheh, the Hispalo Aravis, and he davened Ma'ariv. So therefore, each of the Avos added on some davening in different mitzvahs. Over Mitzrayim, Nitztava, Amram, and mitzvahs Yiseres, and in Egypt, Amram gave us some more mitzvahs. Ad Sheba Moshe Rabbeinu, B'nishma Torah Yado. Until Moshe Rabbeinu came along and finished the Torah. So basically, that's the Rambam giving us a little history about how the 7 mitzvahs developed. First there was 6, then 7, and then Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov added. So whatever we see is in the 7 mitzvahs, so normally it's understood that a Jew is obligated to keep 613 commandments. Well, maybe we don't have them practically today, but in theory we'd have to keep them all. And some are only relevant to Kohanim, but in theory we're obligated in the 613, and a Gentile is only obligated in the 7 universal laws. So we don't find, Jeff.
I'm sorry, let's say in the Rambam, Abraham added 2 mitzvahs. What does that mean? On the one hand, he observes 613, however you understand that. On the other hand, what do you mean he added? It's not his power to add or not. It's God's power. So I don't understand he added 2 mitzvahs.
Right, well, number one is, the Rambam doesn't discuss that part, but you're addressing the issue, did the Avos keep the whole Torah or not?
Well, either way, if they did, it was voluntary.
Right.
If he added a mitzvah, these were 2 of the 600, he did
well, Avram didn't,
611. I mean,
Avram didn't add it. Well, God commanded Avram and Mila, by the way.
So God commanded him with these 2?
Well, whatever we see, we'll have to get into it, but Mila we see explicit in the Chumash. He told Avram was waiting, and then he added davening. Whether that mean, whether it had the same, this doesn't mean that everyone was obligated. It still remained the 7 universal laws. Avram and Yitzchak added as it gets into what the status was, but as Rabbi Selevan pointed out, there's a whole discussion among the Achronim about what was the status of the Avos before the Torah, whether was Avram the first Jew, or he still had a status of a Ben Noach, because we know we didn't finish our conversion until Har Sinai. The first Jew, it didn't happen. So that's a discussion. So depending on which approach you take, but the Rav had somewhere in between. He said basically they had the status of Ben Noach, but that's why, as the Rambam points out here, every time they added more mitzvahs, Asher Kedusha b'mitzosa b'tzivano. By adding more mitzvahs, it raised the level of kedusha, and they were like somewhere in between kedusha's Ben Noach, but there were no full-fledged Jews until, from a pure halachic point of view, even though historically speaking, we go back to Avram Avinu as the first Jew, but from a pure halachic point of view, nothing became binding until Har Sinai. But that's a separate. We could get into when we discuss the very interesting machlokas Rashi and the Rambam by Gid Hanasha. In terms of that, we could get into it. Or I could tell you right now, but that's in terms of when exactly did Gid Hanasha become? When did the Jews become obligated to Gid Hanasha? Did it begin right away when the story happened, or no? It was added on later on by Moshe when he was writing the Torah. That's a machlokas. Rashi seems to learn that they were never obligated. In other words, as we'll see, it is giving me the history, and we'll get, so that's a machlokas Rashi Rambam. But either way, so the question is, absent from this list is the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, honoring parents or giving tzedakah. So at first glance, if I asked you if a Gentile is obligated in honoring their parents or giving charity, again, obligated doesn't mean they don't have to do it, and doesn't mean they shouldn't do it. I'm just talking from a pure legal obligation. It seems that they would not be obligated, because it's not one of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Yet, if we go through, continue learning Sefer Bereshis and following the Avos around and reading the stories, it seems that the non-Jews were punished, let's say, for not keeping tzedakah. What do we find out? Where do we find by Anshe Sodom and Amorah? And they quote the pasuk in Yeshaya or other places in Nach that Sodom and Amorah was destroyed because they didn't help the ani, they didn't help the poor. What do you mean help the poor? How can I be punished if something I don't have to do? Which is a separate question. Can you be? But at first glance, how can you be? Yeah.
So when Lavan says when they make the pact with Yaakov, and he says, by the gods of Terach, and Yaakov swears by the dread of...
right, the gods of Nachor, yeah, go on. Yeah, Terach also, yeah.
How is that Kivod Habayim?
How is that what?
If he's making a pact, swearing to another god.
No, he wasn't. He specifically, that's what Lavan did, but Yitzchak specifically made it clear, my covenant's only with Yitzchak. That's why Lavan gave the whole thing. That's how Yaakov Kamenetsky goes on there, how he went out of his way to show he doesn't recognize the other gods. He specifically did it at the end of last week's parsha. I'm sure you remember it. It was only yesterday. No, it was at the end of last week's parsha. where Yitzchak this makes a shvua on the dread of his father, specifically on Yitzchak,
right,
as opposed to the house of Avodah Zarah, which Lavan tried to drag him into. That's how they explain that Lavan Ratzah. That's what Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky explains. Lavan Ratzah Lakoris Hakol in the Haggadah, and that's where we get some of that from. He tried to get Yaakov to become an Ovdei Avodah Zarah. But either way, we find them being punished for not keeping Kibbut Avayim, and we know because Noah, what happened with Noach's kids, what they did to Noach, and they were punished. We find throughout the story in Bereshit, other places, it seems to be they're held responsible for certain mitzvahs, even though it's not in the 7 mitzvahs. So how does that work exactly? So there are two different approaches, minimally two different approaches. But one approach is to find those mitzvahs within the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. There's a more liberal reading of what it includes and a more strict reading. Or we're going to have to say that maybe 7 mitzvahs aren't the only things they're obligated in. So our first approach would try to be to find, let's take Kibbut Avayim, for instance. Let's see if we can find that in the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. It seems to be clear that they were held responsible for not honoring their parents. And in fact, and even the Rambam writes that, let's say a convert, someone converts to Judaism, so we know that halacha is ger sheniskayer kekatan sheno adami. That when you convert, technically speaking, you have no brothers and sisters, you have no parents. Biblically speaking, you can marry your sister. Obviously, the rabbi said no way for obvious reasons, but the point being, you're biologically related, but you're not halachically related. So also, technically, they're not your parents anymore. So the Rambam writes, how's it going to be? While you were a non-Jew, you honored your parents. And now you became a Jew, and now you're going to not treat them. So what is it, a gutter religion? So obviously, but the point I'm bringing is we see from the Rambam, he assumed that you were obligated as a non-Jew to honor your parents. So the question is, where do we find that? So there are different approaches. One approach is we find it under one of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Which mitzvah would you guess Kibbut Avayim would fall under? Which of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach? Is there any milk down there, by the way? Is that one of the 7 mitzvahs? Oh, it's right here, okay. And a stirrer, yeah, go on.
Not allowed to tear a limb from a live animal?
You mean so you can't rip off your parents' arm, you mean?
Well, you are literally a limb of your parents.
That's interesting.
Okay, possibly.
It's a wild guess.
Anyone else?
I don't know. This is a bit wild. Dinim, because, system of justice, the parents somehow control you and you must respect.
Yes, right. So some of the Achronim bring down dinim, because why dinim? Because we know the fabric of any society is kibbut avayim, among honoring your elders. A society, the basis is you believe people know better than you, and you're going to listen to the laws of society. Well, what do they know? The city, I'll do what I want. You'll have hefkeris. Obviously, the root, and there's no mitzvah more logical than honoring your parents, albeit many people don't do it, but there's no mitzvah more logical, because they brought you into the world, you owe them everything. Therefore, any society that doesn't honor their parents isn't going to be in fulfillment of dinim, and so some want to put it under dinim. Others want to put it under birkas Hashem, cursing out God. What does cursing out God have to do with honoring your parents? So as we all know from a famous Gemara in Kiddushin, there are 3 creators. Yes. Mommy, Daddy, and God. Not necessarily in that order, but we all have 3 creators. And that's why, as we point out many times on the Aseret HaDibros, that why was it given on 2 tablets? Why not 10? Why not 1? Because the Chazal tell us to teach us the 2 different categories of mitzvahs. There are commandments between man and God, and commandments between man and man. And therefore it's split into 2. Right, so the first glance, Kibbut Avayim seems to be on the wrong side. So the Gemara tells us, no, it's the perfect transition. Because really, Kibbut Avayim is a unique mitzvah. We know kids are people too, so are parents. They're also our creators. So if I put it The first 5 have to do with mitzvahs to our creators. That's kibbud avim, and it's a perfect transition because there are also people, and that's why it's the link between mitzvahs ben adam l'makom and mitzvah l'chavero, because parents are our creators. So therefore, it's when you mistreat your parents, you curse your parents, it's like cursing God, so to speak. So, however, it's a different. I want to try to fit, like this, like we have, like Rav Sajido put out a sefer showing that all the 613 mitzvahs fit into the Aseres Hadibros, the 10 statements. And as it says, 6 + 1 + 3 = 10. The 613 commandments equal the 10 principles. And he has to say, so obviously some are more difficult to fit in, some are easy ones to fit in. So similarly here, the Achronim deal with how you could fit different mitzvahs into the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. However, the Drashas Haran, or the Ran, he takes a different approach. You're right, it's not in the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Kibbud avim, tzedakah, and they're still obligated. Why are they obligated? Because the Ran tells us something else. The Ran tells us not only the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach is the minimum. That's where it starts off. Just like we find Avram adding mitzvahs and Yitzchak, but any mitzvah sichlis, any common sense mitzvah, so a non-Jew is obligated also. If we needed the Torah to machadish something, then obviously we can't expect anyone before the Torah was given to keep it. That's why we find, which is we find many mitzvahs in Bereshis. We find Avelos, yet we don't learn out Avelos. We see they did Avelos 7 days in the Torah, and yet we don't. No opinion says Avelos 7 days is biblical. At best, the Rambam's opinion is 1 day. But they did things which it's to a certain sense it's logical. You lose someone, you mourn someone. Obviously, the details of halacha the Torah gives isn't necessarily we would figure out. But let's say, making a bracha before you eat. So that's a logical principle, but not necessarily making it every time before you eat. Maybe one bracha, thanking God when I wake up in the morning and covering everything. You wouldn't be able to figure out all the details. So the Ran writes that in addition to the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, a non-Jew is obligated in any mitzvah sichlis, any common sense miracles. And in fact, that common sense mitzvahs. In fact, we make distinction in other areas between common sense mitzvah sichlis. That's why the Aruch HaShulchan and other posts can bring down many times. They ask, why don't we make a bracha on certain mitzvahs? Why don't we make a bracha on appointing a king? Why don't we make a bracha on tzedakah? Why don't we make a bracha on chesed? There are a whole list of mitzvahs we don't make. And one of the answers is any mitzvah that everyone else does. Why don't we make a bracha on Suda Shabbos? Since non-Jews have meals also, so it has to be recognized when you're doing a mitzvah. Asher Kiddush Shalom is of Sivanu. You're doing it because of God. So any mitzvah sichlis, and many of them we don't make brachos because it's not evident that we're doing it with shame, for the sake of heaven. So therefore, Chazal never instituted a bracha only on something which is recognizable. But what the Mefarshim explain here is that the Gemara tells us in Kiddushin, there's a famous story with Dama ben Nesina, who was a non-Jew. And the Gemara talks about how meticulous in kibbud avim he was. We'll get back to Esav if we have time, how meticulous he was in Yaakov. But Dama ben Nesina, he was very meticulous. And the Gemara tells us a story about how his father was sleeping, and the different versions of the story. But either the key or the thing was under the father's pillow. The bottom line is, whichever version you want to take is, if he had to wake up his father to get a lot of money. He was willing, and again, to point out, it was his money, not his father. His father's would have killed him, not to wake him up for his money. It was the son's. He was losing his own money. It wasn't like he was losing his father's money. Again, they discuss, if you know your father would want you to wake you up, or the Aruch HaShulchan discusses, could you wake up your father for minyan, if you know he wants to go to minyan? So he says, ideally it's best to get someone else to wake up your father, but push comes to shove.
Literally.
Yeah, push comes to shove, you can get, because that's how far kibbud avim goes. So the Gemara has a case where he gave up all this money and he was rewarded with the paraduma, other things. So the Gemara has an expression, look how far we have to go. if Daba ben Nesina did this, then of course I always like paraphrasing this Gemara when I say how far I go for Kibbud Av V'Em. I'm willing to see my parents in the summer in the Catskills. I'm willing to go to Florida in the winter. That's how far I'm willing to go. I don't know if anyone can match that. But the Gemara says, how far do you have to go for Kibbud Av V'Em? The Gemara says, look how far. If David wasn't even obligated in Kibbud Av V'Em, and yet he did all of this, how much more so you who are chayiv in Kibbud Av V'Em? So what do we see from this Gemara? The Gemara says explicitly that a non-Jew is chayiv in Kibbud Av V'Em. The Gemara says, we see that a non-Jew is not chayiv in Kibbud Av V'Em. It says he wasn't obligated, look how much he did, and we're obligated, look how much we have to do. So in this Gemara, it seems to be a kasha, we see a non-Jew is not obligated in Kibbud Av V'Em. So the Ran explains, it's no question. He says, what do we say? What is a goy chayiv? And besides the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, that plus any mitzvah sichlis, any logical mitzvah. Not to wake up your father to lose $1 million is certainly not logical. In fact, they'd probably lock you up somewhere if you did that today. But the point being is, that was something which wasn't. You're right. So not to wake up your father to make $5 million, that's not. But to hit your father, to curse your father, to mistreat your father, that is a mitzvah sichlis. That is a non-Jew is obligated.
Sorry, just remind me, what's the havamina that non-Jews are obligated to keep it over aim?
Because we found, let's say, Noach's kids were punished for not honoring, and we find their other kids, and the Rambam writes that when someone converts to Judaism, you have to be very careful that you continue what you were doing, and it's not more.
Were Noach's kids morally outraged at his drunkenness, though?
Right. No, the different. I mean,
yeah,
they were.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean what they did.
From your father's mistakes, learning.
No, but what they. No, it doesn't mean the father made, but what they did to him and how they treated him wasn't whether he was right or was doing is a separate question. What they didn't necessarily stop the problem. There was this, and there are other cases. That could be even a case of the different levels of this kibbud av v'em, and then there's bizayin also. There's different levels. As just to quote Revel Yashav, he has when there's a whole question in terms of when there are times where children don't have to listen to their parents. So one of the issues come up. Let's say, they want to go to yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. That could be anywhere. They want to go and learn somewhere, and and the parents don't want them to go. Assuming they could pay for it without them. But or which yeshiva you want to go to. So basically, it's a whole sugya we'll go into another time. But basically, his line was, he was talking about maybe also in terms of marriage partner. In terms of picking someone who you're going to marry, let's say your parents object to the person you want to marry. Do you have, do you list? So again, it's a whole share. But Rav Yosef's line was, "Ima'av mocha." If your parents are just protesting, but there's no good reason besides the fact that they don't like her, but there's nothing, then you don't have to listen. If you're causing your parents to cry about it, let's say there's something a pagam, there's something objectively that it wouldn't be proper to marry this person, then that's something else. And it has to be a valid reason.
I think that opens up a rather large can of worms.
It sure does, but we're not going into now. So,
by the way, you used the word sickles.
Seichel.
Seichel, okay. But that also opens up a can of worms because, you could look at all the mitzvot, you could say, well, are we going to sort them out into those which are logical and those which are not logical? Or
well, actually, we do. Actually, we have we have different categories of mitzvahs. There's the edus, there's the testimony, like the tefillin we're putting on, and then the mishpatim are the more logical. Then you have the chukim, they're split up in a different way. Not in the sense that we have by a non-Jew, it's a question whether they have to do it or not. For us, we're just putting into which it doesn't make a difference whether it's a mitzvah sichlis or mitzvah a chok. The obligation is we had to do it. And we even find, among all people, we find Esav HaRasha. As well, the Gemara praises him in fulfilling the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em. In fact, one of the Gemaras, one of the rabbis bemoans the fact, I wish I could honor my parents even a little as
I sneeze, he needs it?
I don't know.
I wish I could honor my parents half as much as Esav did. Why? Because Esav, every time he walked in to see his parents, he put on his nice special big day chamudas, his special clothing, and I just show up in my regular clothes. So the Mefarshim asked, like, what do you talk is cheap? What do you be boning? So next time you visit your parents, go into your closet, take out your wedding suit, your Shabbos suit, and go visit them. Like, what are you talking about? It's out of your control. So the Bali Musar explained that they weren't bemoaning the actual act of putting on. You could walk in, you could visit your parents in a suit and not fulfill kibbutz avei, but you could mistreat them. It's not the mere fact of wearing a suit; it's the fact, it's the attitude that you feel. I realize I owe my parents so much; they brought me into the world. The attitude that Esav had to his father Yitzchak, that he felt he was in someone's presence special. I have to do this. That's what they're talking about. We also find, as the Beis Levi points out in the beginning of Parashas Vayetzi, that's what the Torah tells us. He left Beersheba and he went to Haran. Now, why is the Torah redundant here? The Torah doesn't have extra letters, extra words. So the Beis Levi explains he wanted to show how meticulous Yaakov was in kibbutz avei. That his mother said, basically, just get out of here quickly. Esau's going to come and kill you now. Just get out of town. And Yitzchak said specifically, I want you to go to Haran, to my hometown, to find a wife. So we see the Torah goes out of its way to point out how Yaakov was meticulous in the fulfillment of kibbutz avei. So let's summarize. We discussed the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. We said we remember the big 3. The things you have to give a bilai for: Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Eber, Menachai, Birkas Hashem, Gezel, and Dinim. And we pointed out Avram added some extra mitzvahs, and Yitzchak, and Yaakov, as the others had some semi-quasi status in between Bnei Noach. We didn't get a full Kedusha show until Har Sinai when we accepted all the mitzvahs. But each mitzvah, they got a higher level of Kedusha. And we asked, from the Gemaras and from other places, it implies that the non-Jew is obligated in kibbutz avei, yet it's not in the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach or tzedakah. So therefore, you have to figure out either 2 approaches. One is you try to find it within the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, let's say in Dinim, or some assume Birkas Hashem, or like the Ran explains, no, it's not in the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, but in addition to the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, a non-Jew is obligated in any mitzvah which is logical, or mitzvah sichlis. They're also obligated. The Gemara says in Kedushin, Davar Menasita wasn't obligated. That wasn't logical to give up $1 million to not to wake up your parent. But anything which is a Jew is obligated in that level, but a non-Jew isn't. And that's some of the approaches in terms of the other mitzvahs, the non-Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Exactly what mitzvahs are non-Jew obligated and what not. We'll have to continue.
Okay.